Hello friends, welcome back to 9 Little Aussies. I'm in my kitchen today and I have harvest that I am trying to get through processing. I've got some canning to do today. We have a bazillion cucumbers, some of which got way too big. They got away from me. I like to pick them a lot smaller than that, but I'm going to do my best to get through some preserving. However, also today, I am making a lamb roast for my family. A lamb roast is a classic Australian dish that is very familiar if you are from Australia. It is one of our favorites, and I'm going to make it today for our family, and I thought I'd bring you along and show you what it's like. Now, in a perfect world, I would do this with a leg of lamb. I have not been able to find a leg of lamb. The closest I've come is a boneless leg, which still works, but I have to say the flavor is not as good. So that is what we are going to do today. I'm going to pop it in the oven, get the lamb in so that it can get going. Now, there are multiple different ways of doing this. There really is. It's kind of like a potato bake or bread, or like there is 100 ways to do it. So I am just showing you how I do my roast lamb. And you might have, if there's any Aussies out there and I want to share how you do yours, please pop it in the comments below. That would be fun. This is just what I do. I grew up on roast lamb. It is probably, honestly, my favorite meal. Whenever anyone asks me what's my favorite food, lamb's up there at the top, and a roast lamb is very hard to beat. I have not been able to do this exactly the way I did in Australia. Like I said, I haven't been able to get a leg of lamb, at least not at an affordable price. I have found lamb at Sam's, and it says Australian lamb, and I don't know what it is, but it doesn't taste the same. So anyway, it is better than no lamb at all. So that's what we're going with. Hopefully one day we'll grow our own, but I am making it in this roaster, just big baking tray. Now, I have also in the past, you could use a big cast iron skillet. That's a 13-inch skillet. The problem for me is it's just not quite big enough for our family. But the key of what I'm looking for when I'm wanting to choose what I'm roasting in is I want something that can go in the oven, but can also go on the stove top. Because once I've done roasting it, I'm going to pull it out and take the meat out and then make gravy and I want all the goodness of everything that's seared on the bottom of the pan to go into the gravy. So that is the good thing about this pan, is it goes in the oven. It can also go on the stovetop, and generally any stainless steel kind of pan will do that. Okay, so here is our leg of lamb. I have just taken it out of the packaging and I've rinsed it off, and I have then patted it dry with some paper towel. And honestly, I feel like with lamb, and honestly, with just about most meat, with a good piece of steak, less is more. So I don't do a whole heap. I salt it pretty thoroughly, and I will put some rosemary, fresh out of the garden, on the top, and then I pop it in the oven, depending either on a moderate oven, which is 350 Fahrenheit or 180 Celsius. If I'm in a bit of a hurry, which I am today, and I do want to brown the top and get a nice crunch on the top, I will put it at 375, which is about, I would maybe 190, I'd just up it a little bit for the first 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, and then I would take it back down to 350 or 180. Okay, so I got some fresh thyme out of the garden. Pop that there, and some salt, and I'm just going to pop this in here. Okay, so I'm just going to salt this fairly liberally. Now, one of the reasons that a leg of lamb, now this is sold as a boneless leg, and it's kind of rolled and it's got this netting over it. If you were buying an actual leg of lamb, like with the bone through the middle, well, of course it holds together better, but it also has a more distinguished fat cap, and when you cook it, the flavor is just so much better and richer. I guess because the bone's in there and that's all just going through the meat. I also don't know if they do anything else to this, but it definitely has a different flavor. I'm just going to put these on top. Another thing I have done in the past is to, that's the oven coming to temp, is to put a hole in with a little paring knife and insert some garlic cloves into the meat. And that is good, but again, I just feel like with meat, especially with a roast lamb, less is more. So I just do salt, I do rosemary, and I will put some onions now around that, and we'll stick it in the oven and get it going. All right, so I'm going to put some onions around the meat. Now, really 1 or 2 onions would be enough to flavor this, but I have a family of people who all love onions. So I put quite a lot in because everyone likes roasted onions. Almost everyone. So there's a slightly yucky bit we'll cut off. So all I do is peel them and cut them in half and pop them in around the meat. Okay, so we have surrounded our lamb with onion, and I will say when we just had a couple of kids and I wasn't feeding as many people, I used to do my roast lamb and surround it with all the vegetables, and it would all just go in the oven all at once and cook through. Or I would start with the onion, then add the potatoes and pumpkin and things later. However, now I just can't fit enough in the pan to feed our family, so I do the meat separately with the onions, and then I will do a second tray with all of the other vegetables. All right, so that is in the oven there. At 375, I'm starting it. So that I might start it at 190 or 200 degrees Celsius. And I'll just do it like that for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes to get that nice goldeny crunch happening on top. And then I'll reduce the temp for it to cook slower on a lower temp after that. Just thinking of a potential question here, and just to clarify, I do not put any oil or fat or anything on the roast lamb when I put it in the oven. I don't put anything on the onions. I just chuck them in with, like I said, a bit of salt on the meat and a bit of rosemary. I do find that lamb is quite a fatty meat, and there's plenty of fat in the meat itself that when it starts to cook, it will flow down into the pan and it'll provide heaps of oil and lubricant for the onions so that it won't stick. It does everything you need without having to add extra. All right, so I'm putting a pan of potatoes in, and I've basically just roughly chopped them. I haven't peeled them all. Sometimes I do. I've peeled the sweet potatoes. My sweet potatoes are about to walk out of my pantry. They're getting a little bit carried away, but I actually just chopped off one end of this one, put the rest in the pan, and this one is going to go in the garden. So I put some in here. Some of these are our red potatoes out of our garden, and they did not fit. I didn't want to peel them. There's lots of yumminess there. So all I'm going to do with these is I'm going to put some beef tallow on top and generously sprinkle with salt. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of dollop this, and then in a little while, after it's been in the oven for a bit, I'll turn all the veggies over and make sure Now this is a really good fat from grass-fed beef from our friends up the road, the farm at Bald Hill. And I know it's all good stuff, so I am going to generously coat these veggies, dollop it all around, and then we'll turn them in a minute. And then just going to put a bunch of salt. Salt nice and liberally with a good healthy salt, no table salt. We don't want any anti-caking agents in our bellies after eating roast lamb. No, thank you. Okay, so we have our meat and veggies in the oven. Now I am going to attempt to make something that my family has been missing greatly. We have made lamb a few times, but one thing we haven't had is mint jelly, which we usually buy in a little jar and have with our mint jelly, with our roast lamb, sorry. Now, I have memories growing up of my mum sending me down the creek to pick mint down below our house in the bottom of the valley. There was mint growing wild along the creek that flowed out of the mountain above us. And she would send me down to pick mint, and I would take her back to the house when she was doing a roast lamb, and she would make mint sauce. So we occasionally had mint jelly growing up, but it was something usually Mum would buy like at Christmas time or something. But mint sauce she would occasionally make herself, which is just that, it's a sauce. She would use the mint. The recipe I found, I've been looking through my old CWA cookbook, and it has a recipe for mint sauce, which is basically just mint, a little bit of sugar, boiling water. You kind of make a tea, you steep it, and then add some vinegar, and that makes the mint sauce that you serve with a roast lamb. The mint jelly is what my kids really love, so I'm going to attempt to make that. If I have enough mint, I'll make some mint sauce as well. The mint sauce is way easier and obviously less time consuming because you don't have to wait for the jelly to set. I have gone and got some mint from my friend's garden, and I've actually popped more in the ground, so hopefully we'll have lots more soon. But enough today. We needed a cup of mint to start the mint jelly. Okay, so it says to prepare the mint by removing all the stalks and then washing and drying the leaves. So I'm just going to do that really quickly. Take it off the stalks. I have washed the mint. Just going to dry it out here with this. I've taken all the stalks out. Put on this little tea towel and pat it dry. I love the smell of fresh mint. So lovely. The recipe called for a cup of vinegar, and it says to soak the gelatin in the vinegar, which is 2 dessert spoons of gelatin. So I'm going to put that in there, mix it around. Then we're going to dissolve the sugar, which is half a cup of sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt in a cup of boiling water. So I'll just let that soak. Okay, so we've got a cup of water. I'm going to pour in half a cup of sugar and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, thereabouts, and mix that until it's dissolved. Okay, then we're going to add the gelatin and vinegar to that, all dissolved. And once that is completely dissolved, we're going to add the mint, I think. Let me see. Add the mint and strained lemon juice. So that's all dissolved. This is finely cut. Well, I guess it could be finer, but fine enough. Let's hope. Finely chopped mint. And we're just going to add to that a teaspoon of lemon juice. All right, teaspoon of this lemon juice. And you can see that is just mixing, and slowly steeping, I guess. Pause on the mint jelly to sort of turn these onions and check on this. So that's starting to look nice and goldeny. I'll put that and put these out, and I'm just going to turn all of these as well. They're still pretty crunchy at this point, but the tallow has had a chance to melt, so we can turn everything and get it nice and coated so that we get a good yummy crunch. Probably overfilled this pan a little. It's not unusual for me. Trying to feed lots of mouths. Got to maximize what you can fit in a pan. So I just tried something here with the mint jelly. I kind of zoomed it with an immersion blender, and it did chop it up a little bit, and then it went all cloudy and white, and I've let it settle again. My thinking was I wanted to make it green, and I thought, well, let me see if I can blend the mint to be more green, and it didn't really work. But I'm not about to go put food coloring in this. So it'll be not as green as the one you buy in the shops, but hopefully still good. It says to pour it into a wet mold, so I'm going to use this little ice tray in the hope that it will set quicker in time for the roast. I'm just going to stir it as I go so that the mint doesn't settle. And you know what, I'm going to pour it into this one because this jug is nowhere near as good at pouring as this Pyrex jug. That other one spills really badly. Going to try and mix it a little so that all the mint doesn't go into one. So it's probably been sitting out here on the counter just steeping and cooling down for about 30 minutes or so now before I'm putting it into these. It's not all going to fit actually. Try and top these up a little. Yeah, I've just pulled this out of the oven to have a look, and it's doing pretty well. Now, one thing when you cook lamb, it does shrink down a lot. So you can see all these juices here in the bottom of the pan, which will make a beautiful gravy. But a lot of that liquid has come out of the roast. I've pulled these veggies out and turned them, and I'm going to pop them back in, increase the temp a little bit because they're cooked through and I just want to crunch them a little bit on the top. Okay, so roast is out. I am going to put on some greens, and the perfect accompaniment to lamb in my opinion, is peas. So I would usually, my preference is to steam peas, but I don't have a steamer as yet, which is fine. I'm just going to put some in a pan with a tiny bit of water and just simmer them, kind of boil them that way. So I have some frozen peas, and I just got a small handful of mint. Minted peas is delicious. So I'm going to pop that in. Did you just eat a mint leaf? So I'm just going to pop the lid on that, pop it at the back. Where are we? This one. And just let that slowly cook. I'm going to pull the meat out, set it aside, and work on the gravy. Okay, I think I've showed you this pan before. Came in my suitcase from Australia. No, it's just a simple little stainless steel pan, but it is one of those family items that just takes me straight back to my childhood every time I look at it. And my dad carving a leg of lamb on this pan. So I couldn't bear to leave it. I had to bring it with me. It was one of those things that was small enough to fit in the suitcase. There was lots of things that were meaningful that I had to leave, but most of them I was able to give to my brother and at least know that it was still with family. So I'm just going to take out these onions. Not showing you very well, am I? And take out these onions and the meat and just leave all these there's juices in the pan. And I'm going to leave one piece of onion, because a bit of onion in the gravy is good. And all of that in the bottom there. I'm going to bring it across to turn this eye on. Just on low at the moment, sorry. And turn that eye on, this one here. Put that across so it starts heating. Now, if I was doing a roast chicken, I would often add some chicken broth into this. And I've done that even with lamb because I don't have access to lamb bones really. I used to make lamb broth in Australia, but at the moment that's not something I can really do. So I don't have lamb broth, but I have found adding chicken broth, it's a mild enough flavor that it works totally fine. And I actually feel like beef broth would be fine too, just to add some more extra depth and goodness to the gravy. Or like my mum, when I was growing up, she used to just use the pan juices with a bit of flour and add water, which that works fine too. So just depends what you've got available. Okay, so I just had a hunt around in my fridge and I don't have chicken broth. I thought I did, but I just have beef broth left. So I'm going to use that in my gravy. Like I said, you could easily just top it up with water if that's what you have. But I just like that this adds some extra nutrition, nourishment, and it does add a depth of flavor to your gravy as well. Before I add the broth, I'm just going to heat this up and I'm going to add a little bit of flour and whisk it in before I add the broth and thicken it. And this will just mix in. I find at this point it's easier to whisk it and get the lumps out. And we'll let this thicken before we add the rest of the liquid. I have stirred in all the flour and got all the lumps out, and it's just slowly heating and it will slowly thicken, and as it starts to thicken I will add in the broth. It will need seasoning. I'll put quite a bit of salt and pepper, but I will do that further towards the end because I don't want to over salt it. And the beauty of this is you've got all of those yummy juices from the bottom of the pan going in there. So after all the flour is mixed in, I often switch to a wooden spoon. I find that easier. All right, so I have got that where it's slowly starting to thicken now, so I'm going to add in the broth. Like I said, all I have right now is beef broth, but it'll be just fine. I love lamb broth when I have the opportunity to make it. It's so nourishing and good, but beef broth is good. And it's not as strong a flavor as lamb, so it does work quite well. Just mix that in, and that will slowly dissolve and incorporate and then start to thicken. And I may add some water to that if needed. Okay, while this thickens over here, and you can see the little bits of rosemary in there as well, which add yumminess. And I'm just going to take this string. So if you're doing a leg, like with the bone in, you don't have this. I'm going to take it off at this point so that I can carve the meat. And there is also some juices that are down in there that we can pour back into the gravy. I'll show you what I mean. So as I peel this back, it's been sitting out for a few minutes so that all the it's not as boiling hot to the touch. It's a bit fiddly getting this off, but you can see in here, do you see this bits of herbs and things? So I'm just going to carry it over here. Hopefully you can see this. And I'm going to shake off any bits of meat that are stuck and any herbs that are stuck, and they can go into the gravy. Of course, you don't have to do that, but I just don't want to waste it. It's too good to waste all that goodness. All right, and then when I've cleaned that all off, got the herbs off, got any bit of meat scraps, I'm just going to pop that in the bin. All right, so I'm going to pick up all these little bits of herbs that have come off, and I'm going to pop them in the gravy. Now there is quite a bit of juices on there, which we can pour back into the gravy as well. The peas have come to a boil. With the mint in there, that will just be so delicious. So I am actually turning that off, and I'm going to pop the lid back on, and I'm going to pull it off the heat. So that will be ready when we need it. See here, this is the little lumps of fat that were on the fat cap in the broth, so that's still melting. I'm going to turn it up just a wee bit. So I'm going to add a bunch of pepper to this as it heats up. Stir that in, and I might get a little bit of salt at this point. And then I'll check that the taste of that in a little bit when it's thickened up. Now you can see this gravy has the bits of rosemary, little bits of onion, a couple of little bits of meat, and you could, for sure, as this thickens and when you've got it where you want it, you could strain this gravy and have it nice and like no little bits in it. But I actually really like it just a little bit more rustic, and all those yummy little things in it. Little flavoursome bits of onion and crunchy meat and the rosemary. So I never strain my gravy. Besides which, it's an extra step. And when you've got a busy kitchen and a lot happening, you don't need extra steps. Then, no, you don't need extra steps. But feel free to, if that makes you happy. Okay, so I'm just going to carve the lamb while I wait on the gravy. And I was just thinking, I am not like an expert carver of meat by any stretch of the imagination. My dad was very particular about the way the meat was carved, and he had lots of rules around what, you know, you've got to cut against the grain and the way you did it. And I am just glad that he won't be watching. He's in heaven now, and I am sure the least of the things he's worried about is the way I'm carving my roast lamb. But I just know I am not a professional at this, so don't judge my lamb carving, please. Okay. That's what, I don't know how well the light is here. Let me see if I can bring this around to see. So you don't want it dried out. You want it nice and tender inside. Succulent, yummy roast lamb. So good. Now probably one of my brothers would be the resident experts on lamb carving these days, but they're not here to do it. So, and my darling hubby is still at work. I often offload this to him because he's better at it than I am. Got all the yummy onions over in here. Like I said, you do not need this many onions. I just have an onion loving family. So we do onions. So all these yummy juices that are left on the pan after I've carved that can go back here into the gravy, because we don't want to lose any of that goodness. So I will just scrape that down. The gravy is not far off, but I'm just going to pop some alfoil over this and pop it back in the oven just to keep it nice and warm until the gravy's done. Okay, I'm just going to toast this. We have salted it, but I don't know if I've salted it enough yet, so I'm just going to whoop. It's very, very hot. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's actually pretty good. I don't think we need any more. So, almost ready to serve. So, I think they're done. Our veggies are all nice and crunchy. The gravy is done. The peas are done. The meat is done. So I'm ready to serve. And then I just have to check what's happening with the mint jelly. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be ready. I just have to address one issue, and that is with the veggies. There is a distinct lack of pumpkin here. Roast pumpkin, to me, just is, it goes with roast lamb. It goes with, well, any roast, actually. I used to always cook it with roast chicken or a beef roast or whatever kind of roast. Like, I just love roast pumpkin, and it is very common to have pumpkin in with the veggies that you're roasting in Australia. I could have got a butternut pumpkin, which is what you guys call a butternut squash here in America, but it just doesn't have the same texture. It doesn't hold its form quite as well. I feel like it goes a little bit mushy, and I have roasted it and baked it before, and it's still good. It is good, but it's not quite the same as roasting a Kent or a Jap pumpkin or a Jarrahdale or the pumpkins that we typically would eat in Australia. So we do have butternut pumpkins in Australia, and some people do roast them, and that's totally fine. This is just a personal preference matter, and I didn't happen to have any butternut pumpkins in the house. So today, sadly, we are just doing potatoes and sweet potatoes and peas. One of my goals is to be able to start growing some of those Aussie versions of pumpkins, and I have heard, I will be following up as soon as I have the opportunity, that you can get some of those seeds here. So I'm going to try. But at the moment, we're going with what we have. That's the season we are in right now. And so we are embracing that season. And this is still delicious without roast pumpkin. But if you have never tried roast pumpkin, may I urge you, if you ever get the opportunity to try it, it is delicious. So we will plate up and we will check on the mint jelly. Okay, here it is. And I have to say, looking very green and minty. I'm a little bit nervous. I've never made this before, so we will see if it comes out neatly out of these little molds, and if it holds. I don't know if it's set all the way through. Anyway, we will check it out. Have plated up, and here is the test. I don't know how I'm going to go getting this out, but we are going to try our dead level best. May not be the best way to get it out. Let me just see. Excuse fingers, they are clean. So there is our mint jelly. Might be a better way to get it out in one whole piece. I'm not sure what that would be. Oh, and that almost worked. So there we have it. And the mint jelly, it looks okay. It's minty on top. I'm going to taste it though. I get a good bit. Here we go. Ooh. Oh my goodness. By golly, I think she's got it. That is good. It's a bit tangy, but it's so good. Maybe, I wonder if that means we need to up the, no, maybe a bit too much vinegar, and maybe I need a little bit more sugar. I'm not sure, but man, that is good. There we go. My family's favorite roast lamb. I hope you'll get the opportunity to try it one day. It is delicious. There is just nothing like a roast lamb with baked veggies and mint jelly to warm your heart and soul and your belly. All right, guys, thanks for joining me today. It's been fun doing a roast lamb with you, and I hope you will get the chance to try it. All right, sunshine and raindrops to you all. Until next time, bye.